Hey everybody, happy Tuesday to each and every one of you all. We are live here in our virtual life group on tonight. We are across YouTube, Facebook, and just everywhere else on tonight. And I'm just excited to be here with each and every one of you all on this evening. As you know, sharing is caring on this evening. So I'm asking everybody that can and will, if you don't mind, sharing uh, like, share, comment on tonight, and just let people know that we are here because the mere fact that people need to hear the word of God tonight. Listen, I'm going to get out of the way because we have a wonderful speaker, orator of the word, who's going to share on this evening, and I'm so grateful tonight for my brother Tim. He said yes. He said I would love to teach and share a devotional tonight for our life group. So I'm asking everybody that can and will come on. Let's share this on our timelines. I'm getting ready to do the same thing momentarily right now. But let me bring Tim in on this evening right now. All right, let's do that. Let me bring Tim in right now. All right, Tim, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, good, good. Listen, y'all, Tim is getting ready to take us higher, and he is a resident here in the Nashville area as well, doing some awesome work in the Lord. Met him at the Beanbag Coffee and Tea Shop, and y'all know United Family Fellowship. We have so many different speakers that come in, and just good speakers and great speakers. But I'm excited because I went kayaking with Tim not too long ago, and
hmm
he's just a wealth of knowledge, and it just brings a sense of peace as well. So, y'all, let's rock in together. Let's learn from Tim. Please rock. Please rock with him tonight. I'm about to be a student of scripture as well because I need a word and I need to learn something from this brother. Tim, it's all yours. I'm out the way.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Pastor Quentin. Thanks for inviting me and letting me step into this space. I love Pastor Quentin. He's got a great spirit about him. He's got a great business here in Antioch at the Beanbag Coffee Shop, and he just really stewards that place really well. You can tell there's a spirit of grace on it, and he always greets everyone with a smile. It's very relational, and you can tell God is using what he's doing there for the kingdom. So that's actually how I met him. And so he was real, friendly to me and just reached out to me, and we ended up connecting over kayak. And so, Pastor Quentin, thanks for the opportunity and appreciate your friendship. So we're gonna be coming out of Matthew 16 and starting with verse 13 through 20. And I felt like the Lord wanted me to talk about hearing the Father's voice. And it's going to be something really basic, but the basic stuff is actually really powerful, and it's actually can unlock a lot of things in our lives. And what we tend to do is we look at the basic stuff and they're like, oh, I get that, I understand that, let's move on to something that's a little bit more complex or a little bit more interesting. But it's actually mastering the basics that actually unlocks the grace and the power of God. So we're going to start in verse 13. I'm just going to read through here a little bit, and I'll pause and make some comments, and then we're going to get real practical at the end about how to hear the Father's voice. I'm going to give some real practical steps towards the end of our time together. So, all right, so we're going to start Matthew 16, verses 13 through 20. And so it says, when Jesus came into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? Okay, now, if you're not familiar with the geography here, he's talking about Caesarea Philippi. And so if you look, if you go to the back of your Bible and look at the Bible map, you got the Sea of Galilee, and then up in the right, upper right hand above the Sea of Galilee is Caesarea Philippi. And that's a very strategic place for the enemy. In fact, the enemy has a lot of activity in that area during biblical history. And so Jesus is actually moving towards the devil's den. He's moving into the landscape, into a geographical territory where the enemy has had a lot of strategic activity. So he's going into the belly of the beast. And I don't know if y'all have ever had this experience, but you kind of hear that somebody's been talking about you, and it makes it back to you that somebody's been gossiping and saying something about you, and you know a friend who's been in on the conversation, and so you text them or you Facebook message them or you call them, you say, hey, I heard so-and-so has been saying something about me. Did you hear anything? Okay, this is kind of what Jesus is doing. Okay, he's saying, I want to know what people are saying about me. I want to know the word on the street. How do they see me? How do they perceive me? Do they have any names that they call me? Do they see me a certain way? Okay, he's checking in with the group and he's saying, what are people saying about me? So verse 14, it says that they said, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Okay, so there's a list. Like Jesus is starting to build a reputation. He's starting to get a profile, and people are starting to see him in a certain way. So Jesus says, but who do you say that I am? So that's what everybody else is saying. Who do you say that I am? He's tapping into how they see him. And this is what Simon Peter says. He says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Okay, now that's the right answer. Okay, and we could like double click on that and get real deep into what does that mean that he's the Son of God. Okay, there are some things in there that relate to the virgin birth. Okay, there are some things in there that relate to his kingship, because a king in the Israelite tradition was called the Son of God. And so when Peter calls him the Son of God, he's basically identifying him as being the King of Israel. He's identifying him as the Messiah. So he's getting very, very close to what it is that Jesus is about. So this is how Jesus responds to Peter. And this is where we're launching off here. Jesus answered and said to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. Okay, now I've read this verse so many times, and I've always read over this, and I've never caught it until somebody pointed it out to me. Notice where Jesus says that Peter heard that he was the Christ, the Son of the living God. He didn't get it from the group. He didn't get it from the crowds because they all thought he was John the Baptist or Elijah or one of the prophets. Okay. The interesting thing here is that Peter heard that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of the living God, from the Father. Okay. Now, that has a lot of implications for this story, because the disciples are trying to be like Jesus. Okay, they're following him. They're trying to imitate him. If he's teaching, they want to teach. If he does miracles, they want to do miracles. Okay, they are disciples of Jesus. They are imitating Jesus. And Jesus has modeled to them that he hears the Father's voice. Okay, Jesus had a very exclusive relationship with the Father. He had a relationship where the Father spoke directly to him and told him things, not just like what to do, okay, not just even what to say. The Father would speak things to Jesus about his relationship with him. Okay, so for example, when Jesus was baptized, it says that a voice came down from heaven and said, this is my Son, whom I love, and in whom I am well pleased. Okay, notice how the Father's not telling Jesus something to do. He's not giving him a to-do list. He's not telling him, say this or do this. He is only speaking to Jesus about his relationship with Jesus. He's saying, you're my Son. I love you, and I'm proud of you. That type of communication coming from the Father to the Son, that's what gave Jesus that special relationship with the Father. And when Jesus is talking to his disciples, when he picks up on the fact that Peter is hearing the Father for himself, okay, Peter is demonstrating that he is connecting with the Father in the same way that Jesus is connecting with the Father. And this is what happens when Jesus picks up on the fact that Peter is starting to hear the Father's voice for himself. This is what Jesus does. Verse 18, and I say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, or my ecclesia, my gathering. And the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. Verse 19, okay, this is where it gets kind of juicy. All right, like we could say a lot about what Jesus told him there about the church and the rock, how Peter is, not the rock, but he's kind of doing a play on the words there. There's a lot we could go in there, okay, but we're just going to stay on Peter hearing the Father's voice, okay? Verse 19, look at what Jesus says he's going to do. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Okay, now, here's what I want us to kind of focus on here. When Jesus realized that Peter was hearing the Father's voice, he promoted him. He said, if you have reached the point where you are hearing the Father, and you're hearing stuff that no one else is hearing, okay? This is stuff that the Lord is speaking directly to Peter. He hasn't told James, he hasn't told John, he hasn't told Andrew, he hasn't told anybody else this. He's only told Peter. He says, if you have reached the point where you are starting to hear the Father's voice, it opens you up to start receiving more authority in the kingdom. Okay? You do not arrive at a place of hearing the Father's voice unless you spend time with Jesus, unless you start imitating his pattern of life, his way of living. Okay, so Jesus had a regular pattern of pulling away from the activities of life, from the pressures of work, from the crowds, from everybody wanting his attention, demanding things from him. He had a pattern of pulling away from that and seeking the Father and opening himself up to receive from the Father. And because Peter is a disciple of him, he's starting to imitate that same pattern. He's starting to receive things from the Father like Jesus. And Jesus says, whenever I see that in somebody, I can give them more than they have. Why does Jesus give people more authority in the kingdom when they start hearing him? Number one is that once you start imitating Jesus and his pattern of life, it starts to shape you. It starts to transform you. You start to become who it is that God created you to be. You become more holy, you become more loving, you become more kind. It shapes you, it changes you. And so Jesus is not going to really give the keys to somebody who hasn't gone through a developmental process and started maturing in their walk with the Father. But those who do go through a developmental process, those who do go through that maturing process, he says, you have reached the point that I can trust you with these keys. Okay? Now, hearing the Father is difficult. Okay? And I just want to be honest about that, because we really do people a disservice when we kind of say, man, hearing God's so easy. I hear him all the time, right? Well, that discourages people, because there's a lot of people who want to hear God. There's a lot of people who want to hear his voice, but they don't really know how to hear him. And hearing God actually takes some practice. Hearing God actually takes some discipline. Okay? And one of the reasons why is because we hear God with our spirit. Revelation from the Father is spirit to spirit communication. Okay? And your spirit has to be trained. It has to be developed. You have to, it's like a muscle that has to be exercised. And the more you use it and the more you train it, the more powerful it gets, the more sensitive it gets to God's spirit. Now, we are effectively trained in listening to our flesh. right? Like, we listen to our flesh all the time. We are trained and matured in listening to our flesh. But we have to train our spirit, our soul, our inner man, our inner woman, and we have to train ourselves to hear his spirit, okay? So let me see, how much time we got? We're at 15 minutes. All right, so I got about 5 or 10 minutes here. So I just want to hit this in about this thing about authority, is that hearing God's voice is a gateway into spiritual progress. Okay, it is a gateway. And here's the thing about it. When you do hear something from the Lord, okay, he is not just interested in one-way communication. He's not just interested in dropping something on you, like, sending you some kind of, letter in the mail or something, right? Like, you're just supposed to read it and then there's no immediate conversation. A lot of times when God speaks to us, sometimes it can be like in a riddle. It can be like in a parable. And he may not fully explain everything that he's saying to us. At first, that kind of puzzled me. At first, I'm a rational person. I'm thinking, like, okay, if you're going to speak to me, like, just tell me exactly what I need to know. Don't make it difficult. Don't, like, give me 3 words, like give me a paragraph, tell me exactly what I need to know. But see, God is not transactional. God is not just into giving us a download. What God really wants is he wants relationship. And so sometimes he speaks in parables or riddles or images or feelings because he wants us to turn to him and he wants us to say, what do you mean by that? Tell me more about what you just told me. He wants to have a conversation. Okay, so he's not just giving us a download, he's trying to start a conversation. And he knows that if we enter into conversation with him, we're going to have sustained interaction with him. And that sustained interaction is what's going to bring about transformation in our life. Okay, like, it's not just about the information. It's not just about getting the word. It's not just about getting a prophetic word from somebody else. He wants an ongoing relationship, and his communication sometimes is kind of like a tease. It's kind of like saying, hey, come to me and we can talk about this. We can go deeper. Okay, so if this pattern of communication that God has shows up in Jesus' ministry. Okay, like when he goes out and gives parables, the people in the crowd who don't understand the parable, they just kind of say, that's stupid. Like, everybody knows when you throw a seed on the ground, some of it comes up and a bird comes and gets it, and then some of it sprouts and die. Like, everybody knows that. Okay, but the people who are actually seeking God, the people who are actually seeking Jesus, actually go to him after the parable and they say, hey, Jesus, can you tell us more about how the kingdom is like someone who goes out and scatters seed, and how the birds come and get the seed? Like, Jesus, tell us what that means. And notice in Mark 4 and in Luke 8, he only explains the parable to the people who come to him and ask him, what did you mean by that parable? Okay, that's the pattern of God's communication. So he may speak something to you when you get out of your car. He may speak something to you after you have an argument with somebody. Okay, but it's not going to be the full download. He wants you to turn to him and start asking questions. He wants to have a conversation because he's not transactional. He's relational. And that runs against the grain for us because in our default mode, we are transactional. Just give me the information. Just tell me what I need to know. Okay. He wants relationship. So here's 3 quick ways that you can hear from God. Okay. This is kind of how God speaks to people, and he speaks to people differently. Every person kind of has a love language with God, and God will speak to them in the language in which they can receive it. Okay, God doesn't require you to learn his language first. He comes to you and he speaks to you in ways that you can receive it and the ways that you can understand it. So here's three ways that God speaks to us. One is through a vibe, okay? And what I mean by that is you get an impression, you get a feeling, you get a stirring, okay? In other words, you get a sense of something and you're not sure where it came from. You're not sure how it got there. It kind of comes out of nowhere and you just get a feeling, okay? God does speak to us through feelings. He does speak to us by giving us impressions about things. So some of y'all may have had this experience when you're talking with somebody introduces you to somebody new, and you get a feeling that something's not right about that person. Okay? You get a feeling that something's off. Maybe I can't trust this person. Maybe they need to prove themselves before I trust them. Okay? In other words, God's given you a yellow flag. Okay? Or maybe he's given you a red flag about that person. He can give us impressions about people. And we need to pay attention to those. Okay? And sometimes he doesn't give us that impression so that we can judge them. He's giving us that impression to protect us and to make sure we don't make decisions in relation to that person that will make ourselves vulnerable to being harmed by that person. Okay? But he also may let you know that there's something up with that other person, and he wants you to pray for them. He wants you to intercede for them. He wants you to start ministering to them. Okay, so he doesn't just diagnose that person so you can stay away from them. He may let you know something about that person so you can start strategically loving on them and start walking with that person to kind of help them get out of the thing that they're in. So there's a vibe, okay, and then there's a voice. Okay, now this can be an audible voice. Okay, now, you know, if you're talking to a non-Christian, they're like, dude, you're crazy. Okay, you're telling me you hear voices? Okay, I've only heard the audible voice of God once in my life. All right, and there's many people who say I've never heard the audible voice of God. Okay, but when I talk about the voice of God, it's not just an audible voice. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Think about if you've ever had a song get stuck in your head. Okay, like a song you've heard on the radio, a song that you wish would leave your head, but it won't. And you just keep hearing the song, okay? Do you literally hear the song in your head? Do you hear sounds? No, but you hear the song in your head, okay? This is one of the ways that God communicates to us is through a voice. And sometimes it's literally like a thought or a phrase or a word, just a single word, and it just comes into your head out of nowhere. It's like you're just going along the day, you're driving, you're walking, you're sitting there talking to somebody, and then boom, a word or a phrase or a sentence comes out of nowhere, and you're like, where did that come from? That could be God speaking to you. Okay? God speaks to us by sending thoughts into our head, and they come to us in a spontaneous kind of way. Okay, so to illustrate this, you know, if me and you are having a conversation, I realize this is one-way communication on the video, but if me and you are having a conversation, and let's say I just, you know, pause in a conversation and I say elephant, green, horse, Las Vegas, Alaska, okay? Every single one of those words that I just said, they come to you as spontaneous thoughts into your head. All of those random words I just said, you experience those words as spontaneous thoughts that are coming into your head. Okay? If God wants to communicate to you, you will experience that communication as spontaneous thoughts coming into your head. Okay, that's just how communication works. Now, I'll be honest, it is difficult to discern when it's my thought and when it's God's thoughts. Okay, and that's where we have to exercise the muscle and train our spirits to receive the revelation, and we start to know when it's God speaking to us versus when it's me. Okay, so sometimes what I do when I'm not clear about it is I won't move on what I heard. I won't do anything with what I've heard. I'll wait a little bit, and then I'll return to God and I'll say, God, was that you? And then if I'm still unclear, I'll go back to him again. I'll say, Lord, was that you? Is that you speaking to me? And if I start getting a pattern of, yes, that's me. Yes, I want you to do that. Okay. And if I'm still unsure, I will contact another Christian brother or sister that I trust, that I know that hears from the Lord. And I will say to them, hey, this is what I feel like I've been hearing. I want you to pray about this. And I want you to ask the Father, is he speaking to me about this? And I'll get confirmation from another Christian who I know hears from the Lord. And they'll tell me, yes, I sense that this is the Lord speaking to you. Or they'll say, I'm not sure, And so that's one of the ways I make sure I don't go off and do something weird and thinking it's the Lord, but it's actually me. Okay. So we do need to discern revelation in community and in relationship, but we will receive it as spontaneous thoughts. I'm telling you, this will unlock so many things when it comes to hearing God for you. Okay. If you can get that into your head, no pun intended, that his communication to you will come as spontaneous thoughts. Now, what I'll do when I'm actually turning to him and asking him questions, I'll have something next to me and I'll write down the spontaneous thoughts that come to me. I'll journal it. Okay. And so that way that helps me actually stay focused when I'm receiving something from the Lord. It helps me stay in pace and stay on track with receiving from him. The last thing is he can speak to you through a vision. Okay, now that vision can be something that you see out there in the external world, or it can be like a screen that you have inside of your brain or inside your mind. And it's kind of like having like a screen that something gets projected onto that screen. Okay, like an image or, and it can be a static image or it can be like a motion picture image. It can be moving. And so, sometimes he may give you a vision of anything, something random. We see him doing this, right? Like you see it in Acts 10 where Peter has a vision of the thing coming down with the different kinds of animals and the sheep. Well, that's a vision, but it was a motion vision. Okay. But then other people have a vision from God in the scriptures where it's static. It's just an image of a particular object or something like that. So, all right, so we're at 27, and okay, so let me close this up here. So you can hear from God through a vibe, like a feeling. You can hear from God through a voice, which can be audible, or it can be spontaneous thoughts, or you can hear from God through a vision. Okay, so I'm going to end up with a story that actually just happened a couple of days ago. And I'm going to tell this story not to make myself look good. I'm going to tell it to you so you can say, hey, if God can do it with him, he can do it with me. Okay. So this is not anything special related to me. He will do this with anybody who will seek him and start to exercise that muscle of receiving revelation from him. Okay. So I'm driving down the street. I'm testing my vehicle out. I just got done changing my brakes on my vehicle. And I see this dude walking down the Anderson Road coming from the Anderson Park. And I felt like the Lord kind of highlighted him. In other words, he gave me an impression. There's something you're supposed to do with him, but I ignored it at first. Okay, so I drive down the street and then I turn around and start coming back to my apartment and I see this guy walking. And he's walking he's got his head down. He's walking slow. He's kind of moping. He looks sad. So I felt like the Lord says, I want you to say something to him. And I'm like, come on. Like, I just want to get back to my apartment. I got stuff I want to do. And so I pull into the apartment complex and I get that feeling in my chest, like you're being disobedient. Like he's telling you to do something and you just told God no. And like the Spirit's convicting me about it. And so I said, okay. So I turn around and I go back and I start driving up to the dude, and I pull up, you know, he's on the right side of the road. I lower the window down. I say, "Excuse me, sir. I live right back here, and I feel like the Lord wanted me to say something to you." And so he's like, "Okay, sure, why not?" And so I said, "Well, man, this is what I feel like the Lord told me. I feel like he told me that you are a very creative person and that you have a very rich imagination and that you actually spend a lot of time in your head and that you have all these different possibilities and all these different ideas and all these different things that come up in your head, and you just have like it's like you have your own universe up there." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, that's it. Like that's it. That's exactly how I am." And I'm like, "Whew, okay, so this is the Lord and not me." And so the Lord gave me some more things to say to him. So I said, "Well, this is what I feel like he wanted me to say to you. I feel like he wanted me to say that because you have so many different ideas about what you're supposed to do and what you could do, that you get paralyzed by it and you end up not doing anything." And man, his jaw dropped. He's like, "Oh my God." He's like, "I just got done fighting with my girlfriend about me not having a job. And I have got all these ideas about these things I want to do. I got all these businesses I want to start, but it's been several months now and I haven't done nothing." And I'm like, "Oh man, this is juicy." Okay. So I'm like, man, the Lord is totally hitting this guy. He is totally coming to this guy where he is. Okay. He is meeting him at his point of need. And this is what the Lord told me to tell him. Okay. By way of like an action. He said, if you will take 2 or 3 of those ideas, close your eyes and just envision those ideas, whether they're objects, whether they're a word or whatever, just make them 3 distinct things and offer them in front of him and say, "God, which one should I do?" I said, if you'll do that, God will highlight one of those things that you put in front of him. In other words, it'll glow. It's like he'll shine a flashlight on it and he'll say, "Bing, do that one." Okay. I said, that's what I feel like the Lord wanted to tell you because he wants to see you get a breakthrough. Okay. This is what he said. He said, "I can't believe you are telling me this. I can't believe that God is doing this." He said, "I'm going to walk back to my girlfriend right now and tell her this is going to freak her out." Okay. Man, I can't tell you how happy that made me because I'm like, man, God is meeting this person where they are. And he's going to unlock something. Like if he goes ahead and does that, I believe God is going to highlight something for him and he's going to be able to make progress and get out of that rut that he's in. Okay. So, you know, this is the kind of thing where when you start to hear the Lord for yourself and he starts to talk to you about his relationship with you and how much he loves you, how you're his daughter, you're his son, how he's proud of you for the progress you've made. When you start hearing the Father's voice in that way, he eventually says, "Okay, I don't want to just do this with you. I want to do this with somebody else. I don't want to just speak to you about you. I want to speak to somebody else through you." And God starts to use you as a channel of blessing for other people. And man, this is where we start getting into stuff that you start reading in the book of Acts, right? This is where God starts opening up doors for the kingdom to start rippling outward. Because as his people, we are coming with something that they can't find anywhere else. Okay? God will meet people where they are, and he will use us to engage them. And that's when people start stepping back and say, man, God is real. God is legit. God is the real deal. God can transgress the boundaries that I've built, and he will come across those boundaries and meet me right here. He cares about me. He knows me, and he's concerned about me and my life. Okay. That is the pattern that God uses. Okay. So I just want to leave you with this. Okay. I'm going to leave you with this story. And I don't even know if the story is true. Okay. But it's a story about a dude named Henry Ford, who was the dude who created the first car in America. Okay. Well, he had an assembly line. He had a factory, and people were building cars on this assembly line. And one day the factory assembly line broke and it wouldn't move. And so Henry Ford's, he went up to his office, which has got the glass around it up in the corner of the warehouse. And he's looking over the whole warehouse and he's thinking, man, I'm losing money. Okay. He's like, what am I going to do? And so he gathers his team together and he says, what are we going to do, y'all? We got to fix this assembly line. We got to get these cars out. We got to make some money. And so one of his, team members says, oh, I know a guy. And so they bring him in and he can't fix it. So he brings the team together again. Okay, what are we going to do? Somebody else says, well, I know somebody. And they bring that person in. They can't do anything. So this new guy on the team says, I know a guy. And so Henry Ford's desperate at this point. He's like, 5 hours has gone by. We haven't cranked out any cars on this, assembly line. We'll try anything. We'll go with your person. So this guy walks in the back of the warehouse. He's got this little teeny bag. He's an old guy and he's wobbling. And he walks up and down the assembly line looking at things, taking out his little ball peen hammer, tapping on things, sitting back, looking at everything, going another 10 feet, doing the same thing. And Henry Ford's back there thinking, man, what is this guy doing? Well, he goes all the way to the beginning, all the way to the place where the engine is for that assembly line. And he takes off one of those metal panels and he pulls a little pipe out of his bag and he sticks it up into that engine and he takes that little hammer out and he goes, boom. And the whole assembly line starts working again. So that old man puts his stuff back in his bag. The whole place, erupts in applause. And he just makes a beeline to that office and climbs up the stairs and sits down in Henry Ford's office. So Henry Ford goes up there, sits in front of him, and he says, okay, how much do I owe you? How much money? And he says, $1,000. Now, back then, $1,000 was more like 10,000. Okay. He's like, $1,000? All you did was take one little thing and hit something. He's like, I get it. $1 for hitting a little pole. $999 for knowing where to hit the pole. The Holy Spirit knows where to speak into your life. He knows the exact words that you need to hear. And if you can receive what he has to give you, what he wants to speak to you, it's going to unlock so many things that no one else can unlock. The Father wants to speak to you. He has a word for you, and only you can receive it. Quentin, thanks for having me on. Sorry I've gone over here, but blessings to everybody. Blessings. Thanks for letting me in this space.
Thank you for coming in tonight and sharing this much needed word on tonight. Y'all, those who are viewing tonight, can you just throw some lights and some hearts on the screen so we can just let our brother know that we absolutely enjoyed him. I don't know if you can see some of the people just comment right now on the screen, but man, thank you for this word. United Family Fellowship, I just want to be the first to let you know this week. What up, Julius? What's up, man? That's a drummer for our church. He's on too. I want to be the first to let you all know that we got to get Tim to the church in person. We got to have you come. We got to have you come preach, man, in person. We got to do it. We got to figure out a day and a time that you can come do it. Also, that as well, United Family Fellowship, we are back not in service, but back in person on this upcoming Sunday. So we are looking for you. We have more enough space to social distance. That's the right word. We have more enough space to social distance, but listen, invite somebody. We're going to be live in person at our church building in Antioch, Tennessee from every Sunday on out, unless something crazy happens, and we're praying it doesn't. So again, Tim, thank you for this much needed work. I'm going back to write some more notes because, man, it was just that good. So God bless you, man. You want to say anything to the people, man? You can close it out if you want to. It's up to you.
Hey, yeah, just thanks for the opportunity, man. I appreciate you inviting me into the space, and God bless everybody.
All right. Sounds good, y'all. Y'all have a good night.